win. Obviously, that was what you were hoping for as well. Has the Labour Party and Labour movements and liberal parties worldwide, have they disappointed their constituencies?
I think that there's widespread view that the parties of centre-right and centre-left are not mobilising their supporters, and the result is obviously an indictment of the political leadership. I think it's important to say that, from my point of view, this is a very sad day for Great Britain, and it's a very bad day for Europe, and the consequences, I fear, are going to be greater in the long term than in the short term.
What can those parties do, though? Why didn't the Labour Party leaders in Britain, for example, make more inroads with constituencies that clearly voted?
Well, 70% of Labour voters voted to remain in the European Union, but we are reaping the whirlwind today of 20 years of poisonous Euroscepticism from the right of politics. We're reaping the whirlwind of a very short period since the renegotiation was done, and we're reaping the whirlwind of a country that is at the heart of globalization and suffering both its inequalities and its insecurities, and that's the fundamental point that comes out of the vote yesterday.
Do you see it tipping over marginally into the US and impacting the US election?
I think the US is different because an election is a choice between two candidates with two programs. What's strange about the referendum is that everyone knew the status quo, but there was no scrutiny at all of what the alternative, what leave meant. And that's why I think reaping the whirlwind is the right expression, because today, as you can see in the markets and as we'll see in politics in the months ahead, we're going to have lots of time, I'm afraid, to see the consequences of the decision that was made yesterday.
Mr. Miliband, there seems to be a movement within the Parliamentary Labour Party here to oust the leader, Jeremy Corbyn. Will he survive?
I've been focused on the referendum result, not on a Labour leadership contest. I think that the very significant point is that this is a big defeat for all three main parties in the UK, four if you include the Scottish Nationalists, although there's a silver lining for them. And I think that the clear focus for Labour is obviously how does it become a credible party that can aspire to government and hold the affection and the confidence of its own supporters and critically reach out beyond its own core support. But the issue that I think is now front and centre is the consequences for Britain and how we stay as a Great Britain, a united Britain, after yesterday's result.
And you'll excuse me if I ask you a similar question on the government, the Conservative Party. Obviously, David Cameron is stepping down. I'd love to hear your view, firstly, on David Cameron and who you think will succeed him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that politics has got itself a bad name, but you have to say that the Prime Minister has acted in an extremely honourable way. I think he ran a very honourable campaign as well. Obviously, I'm on the opposite side of politics to him, but I think his decision today reflected a sense of duty towards the country. And in terms of his successor, obviously the front runner is Boris Johnson. He's run this Leave campaign, I would argue an utterly mendacious Leave campaign. He's got a lot of support in the Conservative Party and he's undoubtedly the favourite. However, as the Remain camp shows, being the favourite isn't always the guarantor of success, and so there's obviously a chance for people like Theresa May, the Home Secretary, to put herself into the mix.
As head of the International Rescue Committee, I think you can comment on this. Does this give the perception of Britain being a less empathetic country in the world?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's obviously it's not just empathetic, because I think the compassion of the British people is very deep, but it's a Britain that has turned inwards. And historically, Britain has been a force for stability, a firefighter on the international scene. What people around the world are saying today is, well, Britain has become an arsonist on the international scene by tearing down one of the fundamental pillars of a prosperous, open global economy and society. And I think that it's very important to recognise that the migration issue is a big issue across Europe, but it still faces Europe, and Britain is still 26 miles away from Europe. Geography doesn't change as a result of the vote.